Okay. So, colorful skies and clouds, session 3. We're going to do a fun experiment today. Like I said just a second ago, one time it turned out kind of cool, another time it turned out kind of meh. This time I'm doing it a little bit differently, and I hope it's just going to be fun, because I know, especially with you guys, I work with you so often. It's always fun to do something different and out of the box, and not just technical. Here's how we paint this. Here's how we do that. So it's kind of inspired lately too. I get caught up in watching those videos about paint pouring. And watching all of the swirly colors and lines. So we're gonna do our own little pastel version of that. And so if you want, you can just watch me as I do the first, and then kind of alter how you want it done for the second part. So what I asked you to have today was a spray bottle. I was telling Linda, I kind of scoured. I had a little spray bottle I was going to use, and then I forgot I gave it to Sam for I think I gave it to him for his trombone. So I didn't have it. So I emptied a Windex bottle. I cleaned it out and made sure the little hose was clean too. In here is a combination of just a little bit of water and rubbing alcohol. And the reason is, the one time I did it, the rubbing alcohol and the water created little bubbles. I'm assuming at some point, if you have more time, you could put soap in there and try the bubbles that way, but the bubbles were kind of cool. So it's a little bit of water, a little bit of rubbing alcohol, which was why I suggested to have a hair dryer handy, because there is water in here. I don't know how fast it's going to dry. The other thing with the hair dryer is, depending on how much pastel and liquid, we can move it around kind of like they do with the liquid acrylic pours. I know that's kind of on the crafty side of things. It's still, I don't know why I'm mesmerized by it. So I still do like it, but this way we can just have some fun movement. I'm going to be pushing a bit of color. So what I'm going to be focused on, if you want, you can do this first part on a test piece of paper. If you're doing it on a test piece of paper, make sure it's taped down, because once you get the liquid on it, it'll curl. Mine's on a mounted. I have mine mounted on my foam core. If you want, you can put a piece of tape across the bottom to stop it for your ground. I'm not worried about that, because once it dries, as always, we know that we can paint over whatever we have here. If we don't like it, we can always remove it, just like always. In terms of the ground in this photo reference, this was one of those free ones off the internet, nothing fancy, but I wanted to originally focus on the streaks of light, because those can be fun, those can be tricky. Just takes a little bit of confidence, but there's lots of blues and dark deep color in here, and then there's yellows and oranges, and so I'm gonna push the yellows and oranges a little bit more to have them there, and to have that light, that bright light up against the dark clouds. So I'm gonna switch to my webcam, which is right next to me here.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Renee, is there a formula for the or a ratio for the alcohol and water? Or?
I would say it's like 1 to 3, like 1 part water, 3 parts alcohol.
Okay.
That's what I went with. Like I said, you could do all rubbing alcohol, or you could do all water, or anything above. This is kind of like going to be an experiment, but that's what I have right now, is like 1 to 3. Okay. Let me switch. Pro webcam. Okay. So I don't use the webcam often because as you can see, probably a little bit, it's not the best of colors. It looks like it makes the sand color look like it's white. So, and it makes all these colors look kind of black and stuff. So I don't use the webcam for teaching unless I'm doing something like this where I need it to look down. So color right now, I'll talk about color, but color right now isn't necessarily the focus. For this, I'll go ahead and just kind of mark. This is an 8x10 sheet. This is a little bit smaller than our 9x12. I'll go ahead and mark a little bit of a horizon just so I know where to stop piling on. I'm not worried about the details of the road just yet and how much mountain and all that kind of good stuff. So for this, like I said, you can just watch for a minute. You don't have to follow along just yet. It's up to you. But I'm going to be kind of piling it on. We've done a little bit of the piling it on with the stormy skies because this is the time where you can just really shove it on there and have all kinds of
This is not allowed up here.
pastel move around and work with each other. So it's kind of fun. That was odd. I didn't have my other light on. Okay, so I'm going to pick, I have lots of different grays and blues, but I think I'm going to start with marking in some of the brightness. I'm going to use some of the colors I had pulled from last week. You can use your cheap pastels for this. You can use your expensive pastels, but I want you to just kind of layer it in there pretty good. It's probably going to make a big fat mess, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that variation. I don't know if you guys remember a little while ago, I did kind of a couple of crazy funky paintings where I let the colors drip down and make all kinds of psychedelic kind of funky things. This is along those lines, but it's going to be a little bit controlled. We're not letting things run and drip. We're just kind of controlling some of it. So like I said, I'm pushing colors. So now I've got, it's almost like sunrise, sunset colors, but I want that just kind of in there. Because once it dries, I can do whatever I want with it after the fact. So I know most of it's like into that deep blue, but don't be afraid of lavenders mixed up in there. I'm just piling it in. I think I'm going to leave some of that extra bright. Oh, that's so funny. I'm looking at my screen. That's purple I just put down. It looks blue.
Oh,
It's totally purple. It is Crayola crayon purple. This is why I don't use the webcam for actual total instruction there. That's so funny. All right, I'm going to keep going. It'll be funny when I put it up on the other camera. You guys are going to be like, wait, that's not what she just did. This is a different purple. It's got a little more gray in it. Just piling it on. This whole side is a little darker. So I want it to fill the tooth. I want it to get a little crazy. Let me get some gray blues in here. I might regret this one. Whew. That one's dark. But it's that gray blue See, that actually looks kind of blue. That is so crazy that it looks so blue and not purple. Even next to everything. Oh well. That's okay. Still piling. I do have a bunch of grays, so I'll probably tap into those a little bit. Oh, that's got a green to it. That could be tricky. I think I'm gonna pull away from a green gray. Cover that up. That's a gray. So I'm pushing pretty hard. If I have a little bit of piles of dust, I'm okay with that. I kind of want all that in there. That was just a pretty much straight up gray. I'm just looking for different colors that might work the best with this. So piling it in again, this is a Rembrandt, so it's kind of pushing some of that other dust around, which is good. If I ruin my yellow, I'm not concerned. Because I did put extra yellow in there, so I'm not really concerned if I ruin that. I'm just kind of looking around to decide like how much more I want to put on. I want to have enough that it's going to move. That it's going to start moving around in a really cool way. I need something a little darker. All right, it's kind of a brighter blue, but it is darker in value. So you can see maybe it's starting to kind of smear around a little bit, which means I'm filling the tooth, which is kind of what I want. Okay. One more color here. I want to get like I want to get a deeper purple, not necessarily, eggplant or anything like that, but yeah, just to mix around with the blue. So in my piles of pastel dust, lots of blue, lots of purple, a little bit of gray, even though it looks all blue. Kind of add a little bit more yellow just to have it on there. Obviously, once this dries, we're going to tighten it up with our mark making, but I want to see what happens with all the swirls and such. Put some down there too. Okay. So I've got all those piles happening here. Oh, you know what I need to consider? I need to consider the fact that my room is crooked, so my table has a slant to it. So I'm putting a little piece of baby wipe on the other end because my whole room goes down to the back of the house because technically it's a closed-in porch. So, all right, so now I'm just going to shake up the bottle a little bit for that hopefully bubble kind of thing. And I'm testing my distance right now. So I'm kind of far away. If I feel like if I'm too close, I'm just going to like create like a big splash and stuff. But I just want to get it nice and wet. So it's got a big, nice big pile. So just kind of want to swirl it around. And it's lifting up some of that extra yellow. So that's kind of cool. And once you get it to where you think you like how everything's sitting, then just stop it. You can touch it if you want. You can help it along and mix it around in this wet. That's kind of fun. It feels a little bit like paint in there. I kind of like that. I want to give it a little bit of swirly. I don't want to muddy it up too much, but I just want to get like an idea of getting that motion. That little bit, oh, you can see nothing but bright lights on there. I'm sorry. Here we go. It's kind of like a starry night, but these little bits of yellow are sitting right on top. All right, so I'm gonna, I kind of like that. This is fun. We'll see how I like it when it dries, but so far this is fun. All right, what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna get out the hair dryer and see if it is gonna ruin it. I'm gonna put it on the low setting. I do have it plugged into a power strip. If I lose you, I'll get back on. Hopefully, it won't. Oh, wait. Well, that's kind of fun too. Oh, I like that. That's kind of fun. Okay, so even on the low setting, it moves it around a lot. So I'm gonna go kind of high from it. All right, I was standing off to the side and I kind of pushed it around. So that looks really kind of cool. I'm going to take and dab away some of the extra moisture from the bottom. It's looking a little muddy right now, but I'm hoping once it dries and all you guys are seeing is the reflection of the light. I blew away all my little things. I'm hoping once it dries, it leaves a little bit more interest. I am going to still take this is just my wet white. I'm going to dab at it, which I really like this. You can kind of pull away some of that muddy. Hold on. All these overhead reflections are a little more challenging than I thought. All right, I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to switch cameras for a second because I can tell that all we see is reflections from the overhead lights. All right. So right now, this is what it has. So it's really deep and dark right now because it's still pretty wet. I dabbed away around the yellow to kind of really brighten it up, and it left some really cool patterns in there. So I'm going to stop the recording for a second so it can dry. And you guys can work if you haven't already. So I did tell you to watch first. So I don't expect that you had anything done. So we'll give it a little bit of time. All right. So I'll switch over the cameras in just a second. So at this point, I can see like some of it's a little muddy, some of it's not necessarily how I wanted it to be. It looks more like a stained background, but there's a lot of nuances in it that I kind of like. And you could even push a little further if you wanted to. While it's upright now, you could add some more pastel and then some more rubbing alcohol, and you can make drips and things like that. You can do really kind of really cool textural things with it. I think what I'm going to do is just keep going with it as it is. I'm not going to add any more rubbing alcohol or any other kind of liquid for this particular section, but oh, you're on. Let's see. Oh, I don't have, okay. Okay, so now you can see my colors a little bit better from the webcam. The dark that I put over here got really, really heavy, which is fine. And you can see that I kind of dabbed away. You can see there's like patterns in there for me dabbing away. There's a little bit of yellow that's kind of sitting on top of that purple. Just like with anything, we can just kind of give it a little wipe and a little shimmy. Whatever you don't like, you can always get rid of once it's dry. So again, make sure it's dry. Whether it's whether you used your hair dryer or just time. I'm just kind of feeling around to see how thick everything is. So far, it's all pretty, I still have a lot of tooth left. Even though I piled a bunch on there, it all kind of rolled around. I think maybe the next time I'll keep a little more light, right? And not so much dark because it got really heavy. But that's okay because I feel like it does have a nice heavy feeling over there. All right. So now, depending on what your result was, you can just start painting on top. You can decide if you like your texture and you can keep going. I'm going to be a little gentle as I start this. I want to try to use what I've done. And not fully cover over everything if I can. Just because I went through the effort to do it. So maybe if I can keep some of it, that would be a good thing. So just basically where I was, I'm just adding, starting with the colorful stuff first. The beams of light are going to be towards the end, by the way. And we'll tackle them in two different ways. So just paint as if they aren't there for right now. So I'm just very gently adding color and information. We have all of these really cool edges up against the dark, but you can kind of see through. There's not a whole lot of sharpness, but that color is just floating right on the edge. So keep your gentle touch, just that little scratch. I'm not using the whole stick. I'm just using that little tip. You can kind of see it's kind of beveled there where I'm just using just a little bit. That inside is super bright and I'm not there yet. I'm just kind of tapping away here. I'm clearly not going exactly how the photograph shows. Just kind of taking it with a loose interpretation of the shapes of things. This is a pink that's not quite as bright, but it calms down the yellow a little bit. I'm gonna get some of those bright spots in there. Now those bright spots can be a little challenging. So just start with marking in where the brightness needs to go, and we'll work on nuancing and softening and things later. But just start to place it. I'm not gonna blend anything for a little bit. I know we have a lot more wiggle room to blend on skies like this, but I'm not blending just yet because those bright colors can get muddled pretty fast. You know, unlike the heavy clouds, they can get a little muddled because that's kind of what they're doing there. This is a nice medium blue, kind of looking at the edges of the clouds there. Just a little bit of ignoring, like I said, just kind of ignoring the rays of light. Going with a variety of light to medium to light blues for this top section here. And I'm using the whole stick to just gently add the color. As it plays with one another, it might work out that you don't have to touch it after the fact, because the pigment is just kind of piling up on itself, which is always fun. So you don't necessarily have to go in and do anything to it. You just kind of let it live, and it'll do what you want. Kind of like that. Okay. So there is that light blue kind of hanging out up against the yellows too. So I'm just kind of laying it in there. And I haven't really touched the lavender yet, so I'm still going to get back into those little lavenders. Adding a lot of color at once, so I need to step back quite a bit. So don't forget to step back. We've already put a lot of pigment down, and it's been 40 minutes or so. Now this one is a really soft stick. I think it's a Jack Richardson. It's very small. That's what I have left, but it feels like a Jack Richardson, which means that pigment moves differently. When there's other pigment underneath it, it just kind of smushes things in for me. So that's kind of good in this scenario. I don't mind that right now. I'm working on some of those edges. probably gonna go ahead and just because it's gonna drive me nuts, I'm gonna put in some of that ground. I'm not gonna try and fit every little aspect that's in this. I mean, I could, I guess, but looks like there's a distant mountain range and then a little bit of a highway that kind of creeps along there, with some evergreens and some kind of a field. If you really think about it, there's a lot of information to try and get in there. So I'm going to start with the basics. I'm going to start with that background mountain range. And I'm going to use just a simple kind of a bluish gray because it is in the distance, so it doesn't have to be real precise. However, you want it to be a little bit different than the sky. This has a little bit of a blue green to it. I'm gonna add something to this. Not quite what I wanted, but it's not exactly wrong either. I'm gonna go into the whole green family. I do have some gray greens. All right, so those two mixed together ends up being nice. So this is like a pretty deep grayish evergreen kind of a feel, but up with that bluish green, it's what I wanted. This line back here doesn't have to be super stiff because you can tell that there's trees back there. Throwing in some purple with it too. Couple of spots. So when I'm looking at trees in this type of a scenario, they do look like little black dots and such. That's fine for this scenario because of the time of day and what the sky's doing. It actually works out that's, you probably would have seen it pretty dark. I'm not really fussing about making exact trees. I shouldn't really fuss too much about what's happening down at the edge there because there's probably going to be a frame that if I like this one, there's going to be a frame sitting there, and that frame is going to cover up some of the work that I've done. So key to this particular foreground is directional markings to get it to look like things are happening the way you want them to. Let's see, there's a little roadway back here. I'm just using lavender for a second for this little roadway. Then the roadway can become a river if you want it to.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be a road. I kind of like it as a river. That thought makes me happier. So maybe that's what that'll become. Is that a cricket in my studio? Sounds like there's a cricket, which could easily be in my studio. green got a little bright. On the camera, it's not too bright, but the last green I put on looks a little bright in person. So my foreground just got kind of scumbly a little bit. Just impressionistic. I'm not really concerned about, since I changed it to like a river, I can make that a little wider. Just give the impression that that's where the river is going, kind of a thing. Oh, well, that's kind of sad. There is a big old cricket. Looks like Kaiser got to it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
They'll eat leather, those things.
Yeah, and I learned from Stanford, like they eat your paper too. I didn't know they eat paper. So
Yuck.
okay. So I'm gonna step back for a second and see. Kind of like where it's going. I'm pretty happy with the foreground, so I'm just going to leave that be for right now. I want to soften some things up. I have some nice piles of pastel going here, but I still think it's probably a little on the thin side. So I'm going to take my pipe insulation and just kind of set it in place, So sometimes when we have, even though UArt doesn't have a specific pattern, the grit of the paper grabs differently. So I'm just kind of setting some things in place without creating new colors. I just want to soften some of the markings, and it's going to be, I might suggest, tapping sometimes, but in this scenario, there's too much to tap. Probably take way too long. And just gently moving some things around. Creating those soft edges to the clouds. There is a lot of dramatic light shift in the clouds, and I'm building my way to it. I'm not coming in hot, kind of just taking my time to get there. Oh, this middle section has some huge variations happening in there. So that's kind of, I like the way that's starting to change. I'm gonna do similar, it's kind of setting in place for the lights. As you can hear, the scratching became a little louder, so there's less pigment.
I let him out.
It's just like crying,
Yeah.
but not at the door.
Oh, well.
Like sitting in my chair crying at me.
Once you open the door. Oh, boy.
Okay, I'm going to pause the recording for a minute. So the more I paint, the more I'm not using that little underpainting technique that we started with. I think it is definitely something I want to continue to play with, but for right now, at least it kind of stained the page for me and got some of that heavy cloud work in. Some of this delicate stuff, it's just going to take a little time. It's just going to take a little bit of patience to get the effects that we want. I did even soften up a little bit more those upper clouds. But I liked the experiment today. I think it was fun. And I think it's super useful, you know, just to know what else you can do with pastel. It doesn't have to be one particular thing. Get some more contrast in here. So that's what the rest of this time is going to be for me, is just stepping back quite often to look at all the different shapes and all the different lights and darks and how they touch each other, how are your edges. Cloud work has a lot to do with edges, whether they're soft and whether they're harsh. We do have some of that really, really bright sunlight. That's about the only time you'll see those sharp edges on clouds, is when the sun is coming up or down and you have that really sharp, crisp edge on them. But in this scenario, that sharp edge is only in the middle, but it still gets a little blurred out by some of the color that's there. So take your time and just observe and slowly add your color, your markings. This gets really heavy in here. So this is a deep, deep purple. I'm also looking at how the cloud is shaped. Sometimes you can see some of those little directional markings. Sometimes it's just little puffs. So that does make a difference. So this one has a little swoop kind of going up a little bit. So that's how I can apply that. So you can see the kind of that roll, a little bit of a roll of the cloud in there before I add some more light. And as I said in the beginning, I'm not going with exactly the same. I mean, it's kind of similar to what the cloud work is, but the more I stare at it, the more I realize, you know, it's not exactly the same. You know, I start making the marks and adding the color where I see it. And then I realize, oh, I should have gone over there. So it doesn't, whatever you get in there. And the longer I go, the more pigment I have on the paper. And so some of it starts to pile up and leave little piles of pastel. And that's fine. I'm going to leave them there for a little bit. But those are the times where it can get a little muddy or it can work to your advantage. So I encourage you to continue to take your time with your markings. I guess since I made that a river, I can probably put little hints of yellow in the water. Give it a little shine of some sort. When we hit about 10:30 or so is when I'll tackle those streaks of light. So in the meantime, I will be adding pigment, continuing to add pigment to the whole sky to get the look that I want. Okay, so I'm looking, everything's starting to get a little on the purple side for me. So I want to kind of take it into the blues. Um, and of course, taking cloud work into the blues is always a little tricky because if it gets too blue, then it's the sky. Or if it's too dark. So just to continue with, I was thinking about that combination of blue and purple and keeping it within the same value. So right now I'm adding a bit of a darker blue with the purple, and I'll add some more of that same value purple on top of that blue to get the look that I'm after. So right now on camera, it looks very blue. But when I add some of that depth of purple, it'll start to work itself out. So at first, I'm going to just take that same approach where just gently adding the color right on top of one another. And hopefully I don't really have to touch it. Just letting it work together. Something dragging in there. This is one of those times where it's easy to get carried away because you have a stick in your hand and you just keep adding and adding and adding. So make sure to do it with a conscience. Just absent-mindedly mark if you're looking for a specific goal. Let's see. I tell you, it's fine. It's fine. No, don't go there. No. This lavender is a little bit dull. No life to it. So as I'm grabbing, I'm looking for something with a little bit of pigment, but a little bit of bright, so I can lighten up some of the parts of the sky, which it's always tricky. Certain colors kind of pale everything out and dull everything out. And lavender is one of those colors that's easy to get caught up in the trap of muddy dullness with the lavender. So I lost my train of thought there. So I'm starting to get little piles of pigment, which in normal situations, if I wasn't working in sky, I wouldn't really mind. But since I am working on the sky, wait, I said that backwards. Sometimes if I'm working on the sky, I don't mind the piles of pigment because I want all of that to move it around. If I do mind it, I would be working on getting it off of there so I don't mess anything up. But I'm still going to keep adding without removing any of those piles just yet. So now when I'm adding a little bit of that white to the top, I'm just kind of tapping it down. So you need a softer pastel to do that. To grab just a little bit of pigment. And that kind of fades into the lightness over here. All right, so this is a time where a Jack Richardson does me no good. I have so much pigment on there, it's not gonna mark at all. But I'm looking for those really cool kind of pinky colors to add up in there. But I shouldn't be so worried about matching because this is not my photograph. So I don't know how much alteration was done. So it could have been this person really pushed and punched up colors that weren't there. And so for me to try to match them is probably silly. This one is also a Jack Richardson, but it helps to blend a little bit and soften some of those edges. So I'm going to use it for a minute where I can. So we are amazingly close to November, which is mind-blowing to me right now, but that means for any Cape May resident, the library class will be starting. I think it's the first week of November.
Yeah. November 2nd.
Yeah, so that's coming up. I get, so I'm assuming registration is open for that.
Yeah, it opened yesterday, I think.
Oh, good. Hopefully.
Checked, Linda, to see how many openings are left. I would love to do it, but I can't get there until after the 9th.
Mm,
And once you miss that first class,
yeah, they're so funny about that first class.
boot you out, so. But we're gonna have a Tuesday class then, November?
I think it's Tuesdays. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday.
No, Wednesday is the CI class.
Yeah, Wednesday's the CI class. Yeah, no, so Tuesday is
The Zoom.
the Zoom. Yeah, that's right, because of November. Which I'm excited for the figures in the landscape. There's going to be a little bit of drawing. So, have your sketch pads or charcoal pads ready for drawing for that, but it's going to be fun. That's kind of nice. Make sure to keep your fingers clean. I keep almost touching with muddy fingers, and that's going to be bad when I get all of these light colors involved. Kind of making some things up now as I go along. I'm looking at the screen just to kind of see how it's reading. So you guys definitely stand back often and decide how you like how things are going, right now, you don't have to, once you get to a certain point, you guys know you don't have to keep it completely matching to your photo reference. And these gentle little layers of color where you don't really want to create a new color, but you want the colors to kind of play on top of one another, because that's what clouds do. I mean, you have, especially when you have that light source right there, some of that color comes shining through, and then some of it hangs back, and then some of it's like, oh, you can see that little bit of cloud layering itself over the top. So those are the things you want to keep in mind, letting it happen, letting those little layers shine through with one another. And in some places, there's such a high contrast in color, maybe you don't really want that kind of contrast. So don't do it if it doesn't make you happy.
Is this our last sky one?
No, we have one more week.
Okay.
This is week number 3.
Okay.
Which, of course, the classing sea aisle is skies. So I'll make them different for you guys if you guys are in the class. It won't be all the same of what we did, but it'll be fun.
I'll be the only one there. Patty's in New York and Kathy's gone to Florida.
Oh, yeah. So I'll try and make it a little different for you. Although we'll probably start off with stuff that's a little simpler, since sometimes, since I won't necessarily know everybody in the class, sometimes, we have like people who are true beginners and stuff. So I'll start off a little simple and then build in. So if you want to have another reference with you that first week or so, just in case it's something a little too simple for you, you are more than welcome to.
Repetition's always good, right?
The repetition is good. Yes, indeed. All right, I'm gonna leave mine sit for a minute. It's always tricky. I always find it tricky to get the right yellows and oranges and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and I know, I get it. Like, I have to layer. You got to layer in your pinks and your lavenders and everything all together to end up getting what you want. But it can still be frustrating nonetheless to try and get the color you're looking for. Yellow is also another one of those colors that it can be so wrong. Or, it just seems like it's not quite right. And it takes a couple of layers to get it there with different colors. So this is a little bit lemony, which is always tricky because I've got blues up in here. Might be creating some green that I don't want. So I have to just be careful. Okay. It is 11:18. I'm gonna pause for a minute. 11:18. It's 10:18. I'm gonna pause for a minute, and then when we come back, we'll work on the rays of light. Okay, so rays of light. We want those streaks. I'm going to do it in 3 different ways for you guys. 3 different ways. So you can decide what's best for you. I'm going to do it with pipe insulation. Which I have a feeling is what I'm gonna like the best, but we'll see. I'm going to do it with a piece of hard pastel. This is a new pastel. Now, I am learning, I told you guys a while ago, I bought that like sacrificial set from Hobby Lobby that was really, really cheap. The whites from that set have been useless.
Oh, really?
They're so hard. They don't have any pigment and they don't do anything for me. So this is an actual new pastel, hard one, not just a generic hard one. And then the third way will be with a stiff bristled paintbrush. Okay. So while we've been working, I really have a lot of white and light piled in those particular areas because I want it to be able to drag. So I'm going to do the paintbrush first. Risks and rewards. All right. I'm using the stiff bristled because the soft bristle, like a watercolor brush, really just takes the pigment off. And I know it takes the pigment off. You don't really have much control over it at all. The stiff bristle, while it does take pigment off, it still leaves a lot behind and can still drag a little bit. So it might be a good possibility. It might not. With the hard pastel, just like when I'm doing portraits, it'll leave a little pigment and blend a little pigment. So this could be a really nice option. And then the pipe insulation is going to take what I have and drag it because I'm going to use the soft, the smooth side. I'm not going to use the open bristle. The open cells will take it away. The smooth side will quote unquote blend, but I'll take it and drag it. So first one, I'm going to take this side down here. I'm just going to gently set the paintbrush in and pull. Not doing a lot, it's doing a little bit. It's a very gentle streak. Didn't do a lot. You can kind of see it happening, but I don't think that that's the way I'm going to go. So let me put some more pigment back in there. This is a really pale blue. So I'm putting that pigment back in there. And then I'm going to take the new pastel. I'm going to make sure I have a good, so that the corner is not, I don't want any of the edges of the corner to be higher. So I just kind of gave it a little rubbing on my piece of paper there. So I know that that's a nice smooth edge. So I'm going to take it, set it right into the white and pull down. Now that's a little stiff, isn't it? We can see a lot of action. We can see the exact location of the stick. So I'm doing it a couple of times. It's a better result than just the paintbrush alone, but this might be where you take the paintbrush and you break some of it up. So the two of them together could work nicely. So that's that for right now. I'm going to leave it be. Now I'm going to do the pipe insulation. Might be a combination of all three. You never know. All right. Ah, that's pretty nice. Although you can't see it well on the screen. Hold on. I'm going to wipe away because it drug across the blue. So far, I like this the best. But if you guys can't see it on the screen, it's almost pointless. Hold on. You can see it there. Here we go. You can kind of see it now. So you have to be brave and confident in what you're doing, because once it's there, it'll take a bit of reworking to get rid of it. kind of like it. Hold on a sec. But seems to be subtle in comparison. So see, my hand is awful dirty because I've got the blue in there. When I drug it through blue, I wanted to clean that off. So I'm going to take a second and refocus the camera. So I want to get a little closer for you guys to see. All right, I had to flip it off for a second. Hold on.
We don't see anything, Renee.
Yeah, I know. I'm refocusing. Okay.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a close up of it. So that was the really quick drags to get it to go out. Now, sometimes you're like, okay, well, that's not quite as soft. You can certainly nuance it from there. And do it multiple times, you know? But these little rays of light, you don't necessarily want, if I do, if I use my actual pastel too much, it's just going to leave too many marks. It's not going to be so soft. And then if you get your fingers involved too much, then it's going to be a big muddy mess. So a little bit of taking your time. I like the drag the way it's happening. I might add different colors to the drag though. So you see how when it's in front of the cloud, it gets a little bit of a deeper color. It's not so bright. So you can use a little bit of color to go on top of what you drug. Using a little bit of a pale turquoise to go on top. And of course, you know, this can be as in your face or as subtle as you want it to be. It doesn't have to be so crazy. And as always, you can remove what you've done. But it gets a little tedious. You have to remove too much. Darn it, did not have clean fingers. So now I'm taking the open cell and just kind of removing some of it because it got a little heavy. So the open cell means the side of the pipe insulation that the holes are a little open. And then if you don't like it, soften it back up. Take your finger and just soften it back up. Doesn't have to be big flashy rays of light. So lots of options there. I'm going to refocus again. I'm going to put the camera back because otherwise I'll trip over it. So it'll go, the screen's going to go dark again for just a second. Okay, so here we are back again. Pulled away. So as you can see, the rays of light look a little bit different when you're pulled away. When you're up close, it's kind of wonky. But when you're pulled away, it looks different again. So 3 different ways, all 3 tools. And the 4th, I guess, is your finger. You can certainly, hold on. You can certainly take like this whole side of your pinky, make sure it's dry. You can just take it and do the same thing as you would with the pipe installation and just take it and drag down. Depending on how much of a pile of pastel you have, that would work just fine too. But the thing to remember about that, about all of this, is you don't want something that's going to simply take away the pigment. You want something that's going to leave behind and just pull what you have already there. Your finger is certainly a great tool for that. The pipe insulation is a great tool for that. The hard pastel is too. All of them take, however, a little bit different pressure point, I should say. So you have to play with it and figure out which one's right for you. Now I'm pushing back in some color because some of it got taken away a little too much. So I can mess with this for quite a while, right? So that's what I'm gonna do for a little bit, is just play with those 3 techniques. I'll be doing it multiple times. I don't know that, I mean, maybe it with more experience, we could certainly do it in one fell swoop and make it your last thing that you do and you're done. I certainly am not there. So I'll keep playing with it. But that is our technical lesson for today. Let me know when you guys start to try all that. I'd love to see how it works out for you.
Well, it's not beautiful, but it's really exciting, I think. I've
Okay.
always been interested in the, in the streams of light.
Yeah. Yeah, the streams of light are always fascinating because we see them and it's just so cool when it happens, like the heavens are shining down kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
it is nice to be able to try to represent them, the streaks, a little bit. I'm going to pile in some more. This is one of those times where I scrunched in a bigger picture into 8x10 and what's there. So I'm getting a little, here we go. Into my finger. So starting with the finger is nice. It's a little bit bolder, but you have to stop and clean your finger more often.
I had to go scrub my hands. I was a mess. But it
Yeah.
just done a whole picture with my hands.
I'll have to step back for a second. getting weird glares of light today. I don't know why. Things are different. I'm gonna pause the recording because I'm not doing anything for right now. So I'm just gonna pause for a minute. So I'm just tapping with my brush because I got a little muddy in there. So, but the thing about the tapping with the brush is it just loosens it up and takes a little bit of it away. Now, right now it looks really cool, but if I were to blow away all the dust that's sitting on top, you lose some of that. So what I'm gonna do is push it into place for a second before I get rid of it. So this is just a board. I'm gonna push that dust back down.
Oh,
To hold it where it is. And that way, you still keep that cool effect that you had. And you don't lose it. Now you have extra texture where you didn't before. And it's locked in place. I've had that happen a number of times where I really liked the way it looked with the different variations of color piled, and then I lost that whole effect because I blew it away.
wow.
So I thought about that for a little bit, and I know some people do that with snow or waves, like the crash of the waves. They'll put the dust down on the paper and then they'll smash it in. Depending on how much you're doing, if you do too much, it's not going to stick. But if you do just a little bit, it'll stick. So for something like this, where I was just loosening up what was there, it'll be just fine.
I have to say this was fun.
Good.
I don't know if my picture is any good, but the
Fun is more important.
process is definitely worth it.
Good. That's what, and that's what this is all about. We're not always going to have,
The product, yeah.
yeah.
That's the Montessori way. It's all about the process, not the end product.
Yeah. And that's what it's hard to remember. It's hard to think about that. I used to get so wound up if the time I spent didn't produce something magnificent. Because you spend that time and you're just, especially now that the kids are older, it's a little bit different. But when they were little and you took that time and you tried to make something out of that little snippet of time that you have, but it's all worth it. And, the next time I started painting like this, I'm excited because I think that I can do even more with it. I want to do a little bit of combination of, I want to do a combo of starting flat and a little bit of drips. So a little bit lighter colors to start with, and then those bright colors, and then let them cool up, and then let them run and see what happens. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to look at the bottom here for a second. I don't want it to turn too bright because of the time of day, but I'm just looking to add a little more definition. Kind of making things up as I go along there. Which is fun too. It's too much the same. Darker. Doing a little bit of combination of some greens and lavenders together in the mountains. Because the lavenders by itself is too lavender. It's starting to blend with the sky. Okay. Step back. I'm pretty happy with it overall. I think some of it got a little. It's a little more tame and a little less in your face with the color transitions, but there we go. I'm not so worried about, there's a little bit more of a yellowy feeling with some of the streaks and stripes. I'm not so worried about that for this painting. I've kind of softened up a lot of the contrast anyway. So I might play with it again later, but I feel like I'm going to stop this. Now, if I do play with it again later, another thing to think about, another possibility for these streaks is to use a little bit of workable spray fix, spray to set in place your dark, just kind of, and then add some more pigment on top and then pull it. So you have everything set and the streaks are sitting on top instead of blending together. So that's another possibility. Maybe I can do that real fast. We have time. Let's see what happens. Because today we're playing. Today we're experimenting. So I've got this, the cheap workable spray fix from Hobby Lobby or whatever. I'm gonna make sure there's no weird marks that I don't like. You know, I'm just gonna do this bottom part for right now because it's going to get really dark. All right, I'm gonna back away for a sec. It doesn't take long for that stuff to dry. So we'll have it just a second here. But you can see I lost some of that. It really darkened and dulled down this light section in here. So I'll go over that again. I'll have to go over some of this foreground. So if you like your foreground and you don't want to touch it, then, you know, put a piece of paper up against it before you spray. So you only spray what you want to work on. right? Ooh, Sam's home for lunch. So now you can see how much brighter that looks on top of the spray fix stuff. So that's fun too. All right, so I don't have to do much more with that. That can live there like that. The water got a little dark though. So maybe I'll just touch that up real fast. A couple of spots. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to give a little pile of the light. This is that light blue. Really, really light blue. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow with it. Just because we were talking about, you know, some of the rays of light had a little more yellow in it. So I'm going to pile it right on top. So like I said, everything else is spray fixed in between here. So it's not going to blend. It's just going to go, right? Sending it full. It's not so dramatic, but it's there. I guess I could make a heavier pile. It's a more subtle streak, like we can see it nicely. And a little bit over here. It's just a little more subtle. Let me add a little more of a pile to it and see if that. This is kind of a creamy color. I don't know that I like that creamy color. Let me put some more blue in there. Yeah, it's going. Oh, there we go. More of a definite. Yeah. So, and then you can tighten it up. You can take some off. So, stiff bristled paintbrush, remember that. You want something specifically taken off. Now it's really only going to take off those top colors from before we spray fixed, right? I like the way this is looking on camera. So that was probably a really good experiment. If you weren't happy, you can of course erase. Once you do the workable spray fix, you can erase down. I mean, it takes a little elbow grease, but you can get down there. Maybe not with this eraser. But you can really kind of push some of your lines with your eraser. So that was a lot of fun stuff then today. So we used the stiff bristled paintbrush to try it, side of the finger, hard pastel, pipe insulation, and then the spray fix. I kind of like the way the spray fix is happening there. I think that worked out nicely. Now I have to just kind of punch back up some of that mountain range in the background there that I covered up with my spray fix there. And I didn't necessarily want my mountain range to be super specific anyway, so it doesn't really not terribly much, but. So that was fun. I'm not going to work on mine anymore. I'm going to pause the recording and we can talk.